Hello.
Hey, what's up? Good evening. How's it going?
Good. How are you? Looks like you're frozen on the screen right now. But
Yeah, you know what? I do look frozen, but I'm moving my head.
oh,
I'm let's see.
no worries. No worries.
But I'm moving my head.
I
Let's see. Maybe I have
well,
too many screens open.
time.
I'm
Welcome
always have
in
some technical difficulties.
everyone. Thanks for being here. It's Thursday. Um back again with
Why,
oh, I
why?
just heard my AirPod. Hopefully it didn't change
Let's
something.
see.
Back again with Breaking the Cycle. On the Black Men
How about now?
Unfiltered
There we go.
Network. Hope you are subscribed. Yeah, you're good. You're good. How are you?
Fabulous. Surviving, as they say. Yeah,
Yeah,
surviving. What's going
sounds
on in
about
your
right.
life?
Not a whole lot. Trying to think. Hmm. Nothing specific. It's
Yeah.
Thursday. Um,
Cool.
let's see. Wanted to shout out some people in the chat while we get started here.
Absolutely.
Jay Speed was here earlier. Good to
What's
see
up,
you, Jay
J
Speed, as
Speed?
always. We have beautifully animated. Hey,
Beautiful
girl.
animators in the house. Lady Navoa.
Yep, Lady Navoa. And we have
Coach K. We have someone named Coach K in the audience. That's you.
oh, for a second I'm like, wait. Because
Hey, you
there's
never
so
know,
many
people.
accounts and stuff. And I'm like, wait, was I logged into something else? I'm like, I know that was
Yeah,
me, but what account
yeah.
am I logged into right now? Um,
TTR. What's up's in the house? Thank you for
yeah.
being here. And this is J Speed. I think you already said hello to him. J Speed. What's up?
Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome. All
Yeah.
right. CBN's is running the channels behind the scenes. So thank you very much, CBN's. And Black Man Unfiltered is helping out. And thank you so very much for coming here to the network and visiting our show. Look forward to having a lot of good dialogue, fun conversations. Sir Hale's in the house and dropped a super chat right off the top. Says salute to the
Hey.
doc and chat and coach. Hey, thank you.
Hey,
Much
Sir
appreciated.
Hill. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, Coach K. I don't even know what our super chat song. We have to pick like our favorite super chat
I
songs.
know.
Or
We
if Sir Hale,
do.
if you have a favorite that you know CBN has, and we can get that
Yeah.
going for you. Yeah, if you have a favorite, drop it in the chat. Or CBN, if you know Sir Hale's favorite super chat music.
My name is Rosa. They say I'm supposed to sit in the back, but I'm tired here, so I'm finna sit right closer. Come get me up then. It's gonna take about 3, 4, 5 men. And I ain't finna repeat myself again. Fight me. Somebody get her. My name is Eve. I didn't believe. I trusted Satan, ate that apple, he deceived. And yeah, I'm naked. I thought I was awakened. I'm the first to do it. Y'all my daughters, we related. Trick on Big Harry. Don't call me slave hoe. The hell? From the underground railroad, bust down mouth of dope. When I say run, you better go. In the dark, that Glocky glow.
You want to think that's okay.
Yeah. All right, that's my
That's funny.
jam. I couldn't type it.
I can't help it. I do like the
Yeah.
beat of that. I won't lie. He says that he's song from Taylor Swift. Well, I'm glad we went ahead and picked Sir Hale.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Okay.
either way for stopping by, and thank you for the 9.99
Yes.
super chat. Much appreciated.
Okay.
So tonight's topic. What's up, Coach? What do we have?
So nature versus nurture. Gosh, sound like a broken record saying on these streets or in these streets or on these, on people's videos or on panels, whatever. You hear people say that a lot. Oh, that's nature versus nurture, or they'll be attributing something to. They won't really say if it's nature or nurture. They'll just say like, oh, that's nature or nurture, or nature versus nurture, that type of thing. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about it. And to kind of break it down, to kind of give people a good idea. Because sometimes I think when we hear concepts, we might have an idea, but other times you hear it used so often, you might wonder, well, what does that even mean? What do you think?
Right.
You know?
What
So go ahead.
I was gonna say, yes, it's not only a long standing debate, but
Correct.
even research has been like, yep, a little bit of this and yep, a little bit of that. Oh, but there might be this third thing too, and which I know we'll get into tonight. And Shushu and Mandrell had actually talked to this third thing or whatever that we're going to talk about tonight. But it's been an ongoing debate, and many people still question: is this something that I learned, like past or over time, or is this just part of naturally who I am? Is it in my blood, as they say? Is it my DNA?
Right.
Yeah, it's because of my grandma Jones. Yeah, and my sister's bones. Yeah, but
What in the heck? I don't know where that came from, but
yeah. Well, she made me
right.
do it. I've always been this way. Even twins. There's even debates about twins because we share, and then it's like, well, how come you and how come you don't? Mm-hmm.
Right. And we're the real kind of twins. I'm identical. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
But
you're
I'm
identical? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, which is interesting. And this can be a very complicated. I don't know about you, doctor, but at least coming from me, I'm not going to say what it is for certain because let's say a behavioral trait or some type of or just behavior in general.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna back up. I'm not even gonna get into that. You want to start with our first video where it talks a little bit about it, the audience.
Yeah.
Idea,
Okay.
what do you think?
All right. I don't know what you're gonna say, but okay.
Well, because hold on a second, because I don't think it's. Some people will say, "Oh, that's in their nature."
Right.
How do we know? Now we could probably say with older people and younger people, yeah, like they're gonna be different for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's so cut and dry when people talk about behaviors or how they're expressing certain things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was talking to OG
Mm-hmm.
J Speed OG, and he had an idea. We're talking about exploring it. I'll write it up, help with the research. It's his idea.
Okay.
I don't know if he wants us to put it out there. Someone might steal the idea of dick dodging. I don't know if you heard it. Huh? Dick dodging. Have you heard of that philosophy?
No, I mean maybe, but no, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, we'll get more into it later. I just one of the ideas on how maybe if you didn't get out the way, how that might alter some of the programming, DNA, or injury to the baby. So we'll get into that. It was an interesting thought. So we'll get into it a little later.
When the mom's pregnant?
Yeah, when she's pregnant.
And getting hit?
Yeah, she's getting hit from. Well, it depends on the angle, I guess.
Like the baby could get hit.
Yeah, but the baby. It depends on the angle. That it's a complicated story. It just depends on. Yeah.
Interesting.
So injury to the brain, injury to the, and then there's another whole debate. What if because if you look at those ultrasound picture things, the baby might even be in certain positions. So and you can't see from the outside. Yep. So he said, you get enough of that sensation hit from a certain angle. It's like I said, it's interesting. Like, yeah. So, but we'll talk about.
My mind is already thinking about all the what ifs and implications. Okay. Anyway.
Right. And since he said that, I've actually gone around to a few people, which was something totally different. But I've been asking people like, man, have you been hit from behind? And but because of the State Farm insurance, they have a special going on. What's that? Whoa! What's that face?
I'm just not.
What's that look about?
Because I'm catching. I'm already catching when you're joking.
They have State Farm has the special. Their thing is, have you been hit from behind or whatever, and sign up. They have a special. But anyway, all right. Anyway, hold on. We have a couple.
Wow.
Well, before we show this, I know it just went downhill. But hold on. We have a couple people who joined. And who did I just see? Alexis from Texas is in the house. What's up? What's up?
Hey.
And
Mandrell's
and
here too.
that's a nice picture of you. Sorry, getting all cheesy. Mandrell's in the house. Hey, what's up? We were just talking about you and how you and Shushu had actually brought up the same conversation about nurture. Actually, I think this show was something about I can't think when you Coach K, do you get to make your own free will?
Oh, I'm like, okay, that's interesting.
Right, but it had a connection because we're gonna show a video about like the mice, and so that whole thing of free will, nature, nurture. So that's what their conversation was based on. So yes. Okay. So anyway, hello, and whenever we're ready for the video.
Yeah, we'll start with the first one.
Oh, I'm excited.
Meet Lucky Lyle and Trouble Tim. Now you might think they look a lot alike. That's because they're identical twins. But imagine them being raised in completely different environments. As adults, they turn out very differently. Lucky Lyle is a model citizen. He goes to work, pays his taxes, treats others well, and gets an education. Trouble Tim is on a different path. He robs banks, doesn't pay taxes, and gets his first prison sentence at the same time as Lyle gets his diploma.
Damn.
Their genes are identical, so it must be their separate environments that have made them so different, right? Well, there's more to it than that. Much more. We need to rewind a bit in time. You see, one of the great questions of humanity is, what makes us us? Early explanations had a hint of the supernatural about them. As the centuries whizzed by, science emerged and fought a tough battle to gain credibility. Eventually, social science emerged with the popular theory that our environment is what makes us us. Let's call this nurture. Undaunted, the biological sciences presented another theory: genes, an unchangeable blueprint in you from birth, decides everything. Let's call this one nature. So, are we a product of our genes or of our environment? The battle raged on. Observations in a newer field of study suggest that both are partly right. This field is called epigenetics. It means above genetics and has to do with how nature and nurture interact. At the heart of this discussion is one simple question asked by researcher Michael Meany: what makes a good rat mama? Well, for a rat mother, nothing says love and care like some nice, vigorous licking. The higher the number of licks, the more love and the better the mama. With this in mind, the researchers compared two groups of rat mothers, one that licked their babies a lot and another that didn't. They found that when babies grew up, they carried their mama's behavior with them and passed it on to the next generation and the next one, and so on. But could it simply be that this particular group of rats was genetically predisposed to produce caring mothers? Well, to test this, the researchers took newborn babies from low-licking mothers and fostered them with high-licking mothers and vice versa. It turns out that if the mother is a high licker, the rat baby becomes a high licker too, regardless of whether it's genetically related to her or not. So genes really don't have anything to do with it then? In true scientific fashion, the researchers dove right into the brains of these rats to see what, if anything, was different in the brains of the babies of high-licking versus low-licking mothers. When they looked at genes that possibly play a role in motherly care, they found crucial differences.
So this is going to be important.
Newborn rat babies have clusters of molecules called methyl groups attached to these genes. These methyl groups silence the gene, effectively switching it off. The researchers discovered that while the methyl groups in rats from low-licking mothers were still attached, in the rats from high-licking mothers, these methyl groups had disappeared. This was also true for the rats that had been adopted by high-licking rat mothers. The care these rats received from their mothers actually physically altered their genetic expression. Now that's all fine and good for rats, but what about people? Well, the same is true for Lucky Lyle and Troubled Tim, and for you and me. The genes you're born with are the genes you've got. But lifestyle and environmental influences such as nutrition, exercise, smoking, stress, and love greatly affect your biology. These changes can actually be observed at the DNA level. The bright side is that epigenetic changes happen throughout our lives, and our choices can make real differences in how we develop as human beings.
So, I thought, well, first of all,
Yes.
I love those drawing videos.
I do too. Yes.
They're
I have a
very
couple out there.
satisfying.
Yeah. You get straight to the point. Boom. Animation. Yeah.
So
So what do you think?
I thought that was really interesting and a really good breakdown in terms of, and this is something that I don't think many people touch on,
Mm-hmm.
the aspect of the genes and it being turned off, or and I forget how he phrased it in the second rat, it being then that gene being expressed, I guess, turned on in the second rat. I think that part's interesting. So it's a little of both. What do you think in terms of, like, kind of first I wanted to talk about what we hear and how it relates to this video.
Mm-hmm. Well,
The common misconceptions.
Well, part of it is that I'll pick a topic. So like addiction. You say, well, is that really passed on? Or mental health, is that really passed on through the DNA? Because a set of twins, or two totally different moms, or first child, second child, third child.
Right.
And then, but okay, so I can meet a set of twins and say, well, let me ask you, they come in for help with addiction. And addiction is really a family disease. I mean, the one person might be using, but it impacts the whole family. It has a huge ripple effect, because then you have the caretaker, you have someone who might be enabling this. You have someone who might even be the hero in the family. Like they're look at me, so we don't really see the problems in the family. You have that person, and then you have a goat, but the hero is the one, like, they're getting good grades, so you look at the positive things, but it impacts the full family.
Right.
So set of twins, how come you're an alcoholic? And you might get an answer like, are you kidding me? Look at the home I grew up in.
Right.
Okay. Other twin, how come you're not an alcoholic? And we're talking about sharing the same molecule.
Right.
So until it breaks, right? So, but then how come you're not? And they say, are you kidding me? Look at the home I grew up in.
Right.
So clearly the environment impacted one, but not the other, if they say in the home. But the DNA, or the makeup, the chemistry, because then you have the DNA and these chromosomes, and then you have these other molecules that can be shifted and changed over time. Over the course of the pregnancy, these molecules can be changed. And the unique thing about those molecules, they're not really counted. Like if you were to count your pennies versus your quarters, $50 and $5 bills, sometimes the pennies don't really get counted. So some of these molecules, they get counted, but people dismiss or don't understand, who goes around talking about molecules and stuff, but people don't really talk about the fact that those can actually be changed and altered, which will then change the way you are going to be. So you could do a DNA study and be like, well, I didn't even know that was in our DNA, but it was a molecule that shifted. So in real terms, or plain language, it's pretty much saying, yep, you can have a set of twins or two totally different kids, or you can even go in certain order. Coach K, have you ever heard of it skipped a generation? You ever heard that phrase before?
Yeah, that's I've even heard that with twins, but that's a separate thing. Yeah, I have heard.
Right. Well, so like grandma had depression. Her son wasn't diagnosed doesn't mean he didn't have it, but wasn't diagnosed with it. Then her son, so when I say grandma, well,
Yeah.
go back as far as grandma. Go back as far as grandma. So grandma, yep, and then her son, who would be dad, he didn't have depression. But then dad had kids, and a couple of his kids did have depression. So they could say, well, it skipped a generation, like they skipped over dad. But did dad have that box in him? So did that box they were talking about, the rats had in them, but it wasn't
Right.
activated. So he could have actually
Right.
had it. And I liken that to the example of a light box, the kind that has ballasts in it, or the battery pack, like the office kind with the long tubes. So they have a
Mhm.
battery pack in there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, we all have that box, so to speak, but not everyone it sounds like I'm being funny when I say this, but not everyone has the bulb.
Right.
You're not
Right.
the brightest bulb in the pack, but
But
you have
really,
but we have the pack. I want to say we have like the hard, we have the wiring, everything's
right.
there. We just may not have a light bulb, or we have the light bulb, but the switch hasn't been activated. So the moment it's activated, boom, the light bulb comes on. But then what is that activation? Is that a environmental thing, or kind of a development of one of the molecules in DNA? Over time it develops, and then boom, now it's impacting how we are.
Right. And that's a good way of describing it. What's interesting is it's something within us, depending on, whatever it is, and, it's individual. But while I was preparing for this and reading up on it, and we've talked in many shows about how someone's upbringing and what they experience, they might act the opposite towards, relationships. They might be looking for someone. So let's say growing up, they experienced their mom or dad just a physical abuse towards one another.
Mm-hmm.
So they might think that's normal, and maybe they don't go ahead and hit people, their loved
Mm-hmm.
one, but maybe they accept it. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like even that, yes, physical abuse might not be passed on, but but what could be passed on, well, the nurturing side of it, the environmental side
Mm-hmm.
of it, is how we perceive that behavior,
Right.
just the normalcy of it. Does that make
Right.
sense?
It does. Well, so tell
Yeah, go
me,
ahead.
let me see if I can do an analogy or an act to see if it matches what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes when it comes to abuse, so here's where it's competing factors.
Mm-hmm.
So the cortisol and different chemistry
Yeah.
ingredients. I'm just gonna call it ingredients.
Yeah.
And so every mother has cortisol, and every father has it. And actually, father has it in his sperm, and he can actually release cortisol. And cortisol is also in mothers, and they actually pump that into the baby through the pipeline. It gets all into the umbilical cord. So boom, it's in that bag of juice that feeds the baby.
Right.
Now, as an adult, cortisol adds to fat and different things, and it impacts our body, mental health, all kind of things. Imagine what it's doing to the baby. Now, traumatizing kind of experience for the mother if she's in either chaotic home. Doesn't have to be physically abusive, but there are different types of abuse which all can lead to the same type of impact. So you
Right.
have physical, verbal, psychological, emotional, and you have something called emotional neglect or psychological neglect or neglect. So all those have the same type of impact in the end, which again, the same type of boom goes to the baby. Baby is born with this high level of cortisol and would be responding as if they had depression, anxiety, or whatever was going on that led that the mother's experiencing. So now they grow up in a home that's loud.
Mm-hmm.
And what they get used to is they get used to the loudness, just loud. Everything's loud, woo, loud, loud. And it doesn't mean like just because of it's not like the hood. I mean, it's just loud. what we didn't know was maybe the mom had hearing loss in one of her ears. So when she's speaking loud, and grandpa lives in the house with us, and then because grandpa's hearing loss, he speaks loudly as well. So we just are in a home that's always loud. But what's the opposite of loud? Because all that chaos, sometimes we're magnetically attracted to the more silent.
Right.
Well, TD Jakes talks about this, where if he went to, if you go to a home, you have a girlfriend or whatever, or a boyfriend, and you go to their house and they're one of the families like, "Ooh, Passy, give me the goddamn potatoes, man." Yeah. It just sounds like they're arguing, always arguing. They're not arguing. That's just the way they communicate. Well, for the person who's more used to silence, they're like, "Whoa, you guys are crazy." And then opposite. So the crazy one goes to the more silent one's home, and they're just there, quiet as a mouse. Pastor collard greens. Hey, yeah, they go, I got it. And that person is going, God damn, woo, right? Because they're bored to tears. So now, how does that impact anything? Because over time, because I'm already grown now, so some of this conditioning has already happened. But in this committed relationship, I'm intentionally adjusting, which then changes the way I act. So sometimes there's an internal conflict because guess what? The way that I've been designed or built or whatever you want to call it, created, doesn't go along with what my messaging is now. So sometimes I end up having resentment towards myself. Man, I get tired. No. Hold on. Let me speak. Because we always go to your parents' house and I don't say a goddamn word. I sit quietly a goddamn church service at your house and then I don't say it. So they felt unheard. And I don't mean just volume, but like we can't cut loose. We just have to be so certain way. I never said we had to be that way. No, dude, trust me. You get over there and act like a little bit. Wow. So now, but really what it is we're performing one way. We've lived in an environment that was another way. Or like people who grew up in the hood, the sport players that say, yeah, I've never had money before. Well, I knew what it was to live, on the floor. I knew what it was to live, and then they get money and lose their mind, lose the money. They don't know how to spend money, they don't know how to save money, and they don't really appreciate. They don't know how to really appreciate those finer things. It takes time, but it goes against everything they ever knew. At first, there might be shyness to buy some big expensive, and then the twin brother could be like, "Hell yeah, get the $1 million one because we got the money. Quit playing."
Right.
So, in wrapping this part up of what I'm saying, you can actually have people who have learned a behavior over time. And when it comes to abusive situations, I'm telling myself, I'm never going to be in a situation where people get abused. That's what I'm telling myself. But we have to be careful because little did we know if we have siblings, remember the rats where they switched the moms or they switched the babies?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have siblings, you say, well, maybe about 7 to 12 years old, you switch. You're going to go stay with your father. You're going to go stay with your mother. Or there's a divorce. Or maybe you've been together, there's a divorce and they split. So pending how that parent operates, I'm now learning and programming new behaviors. But if I can't make that switch, don't be surprised now if you're dealing with what you call a renegade. Like the person's like, man, they go against the system. And they're not intending to go against the system, but the system really here is internal that they're going against. So they're considered I say renegade, rebel, a brat, rebel, any of those terms, because they seem to be going against the system. So you have an internal system, you have the environmental stuff you've learned, and then you have like chromosomes and DNA and all that stuff, genetics. And then the last part I'll say about abusive situations, if you have siblings, remember the twins, one's an alcoholic, one's not. So this doesn't have to be twins, but you also have to understand the perception of abuse. The perception of abuse. So if you have one kid that actually adopts the idea, mama probably should have shut the hell up. She wouldn't have got hit again. And then you have the other kid saying, why does she keep getting hurt? Why is he always abusing her? So one who gets the idea that it's her mouth, that she earned it. And there's the other one who says, no, you don't earn getting abused. But they both see the same thing. So
How's it gonna
perception
manifest?
plays a big role in that too. Yeah, and how's it going to manifest? Because then if they grow up making promises as a kid, I'll never hit my kid, I'm not going to do that with my kid, and they grow up and everything is just, and what looks like the parent having low tolerance, like, whoa, you didn't even give your kid a chance. What looks like the one-time thing, like, well, just relax. But not understanding, no, I grew up 18 years of witnessing abuse. And my tolerance for it, I've never really accepted it, never wanted to see it, never wanted to hear it. But you don't bite the hand that feeds you. I can't really fight dad or mom about it. So it's just stuff. But now with my own kid, sit down, stop, pow, be quiet, boom, come in. Just, wow, you need to relax. And then the other one who does endure because they've always been the type to say, wow, that shouldn't have happened, and I'm gonna make sure it doesn't happen. Or they fight to make sure it doesn't happen. And the kid doesn't see that, like, oh, I want to knock the hell out of him. All right, good. Breathe, because I'm committed to the commitment of making sure there's not abuse in my home. And I'm able to teach, I'm able to actually say no, empower them, teach them, and then give them space to do it themselves. Teach them, empower them, and give them space to do it themselves. So again, two people can see the exact same thing, the way it impacts them and the way it manifests. Excellent point on what you were saying. I hope my example, I think I ended up giving like 2 or 3 examples, but I hope it made sense.
Those were great in illustrating. It's not, well, as the video mentioned, it's not either one, especially. It's definitely a little bit of both. But also, like you brought up in the example of abuse, but I think it's just a case by case. Like, what are we talking about? Again, generally, I think it's okay. And this is what I was mentioning earlier. I think it's okay to say, see, I'm going to get into the some of the talking points you hear people say. Women are emotional, sure. Like, or men are, well, I'm trying to think of one there's one at the tip of my tongue but I don't want to say it. So there's one that I've been hearing a lot lately about men and being aggressive and being, or like violent or something like that. And while, of course, even using that language is subjective, because while that this person might mean the same thing, violent and, let's say, high energy, I don't know, or not violent, but aggressive and assertive, those have different energies to it. You know what I mean? One's negative, one's positive, but maybe they mean the same thing. So that's why I'm trying to leave space for that. But when it comes to men are this, women are this, and then in the topic of nature versus nurture, is this helpful? This is how I'm looking at it. This is my question. Is it helpful, and what do we gain by saying that this person it's just in their nature, or it's just in my nature, or this is just the way I was raised? Because there's also that third element, which we can get to. But when we talk about epigenetics, and it's a little bit of both, and we also have a role in it too with our mind. Does that make sense? Kind of where I'm going with this.
I do question, though, if people really know or fully understand what they've been. What did you just say? What did you say? It's just my nature. I wonder if people truly understand, because, if you live in different parts of the world, there's a totally different message. There's a totally different message that goes out to society. So in that part of the world, would it really be about that's how you were raised, or that's how you were taught, or you were built that way, or that's part of your nature? So if it's truly part of your nature, pending your society, and I mean your immediate, because a lot of times we give, those talking points are really about to what we see in our immediate, not this wide, we only see this. We might
Right,
hear of
right,
some other things, but this is what. So right now, everyone is doing this. Everyone is doing that. I know what I'm talking about. This is how I was raised, and this is what I. But really, how far outside of this zone? How far out of this area are you talking about? You know, they say poor kids, mothers and fathers of poor kids should drive them into a very nice neighborhood every once in a while to let them see the other part of the world, like what's out there, the other part of life you can have. You don't have to live in the slumlord. And then vice versa, you take
right,
some rich kids and bring them to like some super poor countries so they can
right.
see, you know, you were complaining about getting a $3,000 allowance per week and driving your Beamer when these people are here horsebacking and walking, you know. So really, when it comes to that, it's in my nature, you know, how much of that is self-imposed? Like, you know, it's in your nature and is a behavior that you should change, but there's a win in it. We all do what we do for an element of security. We all do what we do for an element of security. So there's a payoff in keeping it that way, you know. So that's
Possibly,
a.
yeah.
Mm-hmm,
Well,
mm-hmm,
there definitely was, you know, with in the primitive times, whatever, however you want to put it, where we
mm-hmm,
would have that evidence to come to our mind. Okay, you know, like if this is what I see, well, that was important because if we saw, I'm going to see stereotypical, if we saw a tiger, we need to know that, remember that that tiger is dangerous. But
mm-hmm.
now when we experience something in this, you know, just our surroundings, we think that every single person is that because that's the way our brain has, you know, evolved.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But
So,
we don't
but
need to do that
who,
anymore.
right? But who gets to determine if that tiger is dangerous? I mean, I watch the video
Oh,
sometimes, where the kid or the parent is just petting the tiger or running
mm.
down there with the alligators and stuff. Now, most of them aren't really dark skinned folks who doing that, but either way, they're out there petting the animals and stuff. Where it's like, yeah, you. No, I'm just saying, you know.
I ain't claiming that.
No, I'm just saying it depends on how you learn it, who you learn it from. Like I've seen where the dogs lick the kiss, like tongue kiss people in the mouth and stuff, and lick,
Oh,
and it's just
yeah.
all fun. And you know, other people are like, hell no. So there are certain things pending, I guess, again, where you learn it from and how it sits with you, because you can learn something, but if your core
Right.
values, which probably comes, well, it does come from a system. Which system? Parent system, school system, somebody's
Right.
system. And then pending those values, what do you do with it? How does it sit? And are they shiftable or not? And if they
Right.
are, how do you? So one more thing, which I know again sounds funny, but I'm serious. I'm really going to take OG up on this challenge about this dick dodging, because pending how you learn how to deal with adversity, how you learn to deal with adversity could definitely play a role with how you manage life later. What
Oh,
stresses people
absolutely.
out, you know, your version of chaos, managing chaos versus mine. You know, if you got used to dodging some things and it's like, oh my gosh, you know, so and so's going to happen and stuff is going to. Wow, really? So you ain't really been in the hole where the dick came in, have you? You haven't really dealt with stress. You haven't really dealt with chaos. You haven't lost a life.
Mm.
Because I even deal with mothers who say, I hear what you're talking about. You talking that good shit, doc. That sounds good. Now you got a little belly on you, but when was the last birth you gave? And I'm like,
Mm.
I don't know, birth. What the hell? I know. You got me confused. I ain't never gave no birth. Yeah, you never gave birth. So you sit up here with all your judgment and all your, you know, your talking points and stuff, but you've never given birth. Because when I'm talking about why your parenting skill, and there's some parents who really love being parents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, love being parents. I hear BMU often talking about, hey, I'll die for mine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and depending the person, what does that mean? You'll go to the extreme, like you'll wear yourself out, you hit a brick wall 90 miles an hour, and then there's nothing left of you to provide for your kid. Or no, I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to make sure that they have. Or here's a common one, which I think fits into the idea of is in my nature. I'm gonna make sure my kids have better than me. That's kind of like in my nature to make sure I leave something better than, right?
Right.
Alexis, I've heard her on the show talk about how no parenting. You have your firmness, your directness, and your warmth. So being firm, direct, and warm. So you allow your kids to have some things, but also at the same time you set boundaries. And then I've heard other people on shows who are like, no, it's you have to let them be. You have to give them space. You have to. So that messaging, does that become part of my nature? Or was it the nurturing, something that I believe kept me feeling safe? I do it this way because it kept me feeling safe. Why are you staying in that abusive relationship? It's abusive from the way you look at it, but for me, it's very safe. There's food on the table, food in the refrigerator. At the end of the day, even if I'm getting screamed at or whatever, I'm hugged, held, and even sexed, which gets me touch and gives me, whatever. So
connection, whatever.
That's abuse. For you, it might be. Wait, I'm sorry. When was your last relationship? Oh yeah. So I've been with your abuser forever. You've been with your holiness for 2 months, and you're giving me, right? I mean, that's how some people see it.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that. I can't imagine. Well, I don't want to say I can't imagine asking my therapist, how whatever setting that they're seeing you, but it's I don't want to say for sure, but I can imagine hearing that in just regular conversations, especially people do that all the time. They kind of qualify. I thought there was an interesting statement. So nature will always outweigh nurture. So should we come up with an example of something that is nature? And
So are people understanding? What's your definition? Give a shout out. Sugar Bum's in the house. What's up? What's up? Trey's in the house. Good to see you. And Sean Bolden, welcome everyone. And we are talking about nature versus nurture. We had showed a video. We're hoping to give some live examples here so people understand. So if you have ideas, any of you in the chat, about what you consider to be a natural thing or a nurturing thing, like born with, versus your environment, adjusting to your environment, right? So, Coach K, people who go from certain careers, you go into a corporate world, like what's your mannerisms like? Is that something you were born with, or is that something you adjusted to? You go from you go from one company to another where everyone's fucking in the break room or the mail room or whatever, and it's like, whoa, gossip everywhere, and you go to another place where if you say hi to someone, they're scared to speak. They don't say hi to each other. So the different environments you go, but then how long does it take for you to adjust? Because we are adjusting creatures. We adjust often and easy without even knowing. We conform.
Right.
And that's what people say. That's not in your nature. You're fucking Johnson. Quit playing. Because you're from New York. You are from Houston. There's some bad people down in Houston, man. I mean, I'm just saying. I heard there's some bad people down in Houston. Dangerous, man. I'm scared of Houston, man. But the point is, people figured that's not who you are. That's not how you were born. That's not how you were raised. That's not what we instilled in you. That's not what we gave you. That's part of the argument for some of these other folks who are like, how did you feel? How did you figure that this was right for you? Like in certain relationships, why did you pick that person? How did you see? We argue from the outside because we know what they were, what was instilled in them. We even say things like them some slang things. I know certain women who've been told, you're built for it. You could take it. Come on, you could take it. You were built for it. And so what does that mean, being built for it? So
it's I know what you're talking about. And I'm thinking of the examples, like for example, an example for me, and this is just silly, but I'm an identical twin, and I grew up watching college basketball, still love college basketball. That's when I went for the name Coach K, because I'm a UNC fan, but I thought it was funny, so I'm like, I'll say Coach K, which I can't really, that's not my business name, but I'm like, oh, can I even put this on YouTube? Because, it's like trademarked and stuff. So whatever, I'll cross that bridge at another point. But we grew up watching college basketball, not really No NBA, NFL, somewhat for other sports, MLB. No one really watches college baseball, but my twin sister, she knows all about like what's going on in the NBA, like the playoffs. She wants to watch the playoffs, whatever. And I'm like, we did not. This isn't us. Like we did not grow up. Like we were not raised watching NBA. Like who is this? And I know it's because my brother-in-law likes NBA, but it's just funny to see like, oh, how dare you, you know what I mean, do something that we were not raised to do.
Right.
But and that's just a silly thing. But I have found, and I have some understanding with this, where someone will they'll exhibit a behavior that's not healthy for them, it's not working. And they'll say it's in their nature. So they've already admitted to themselves, unbeknownst to them probably, or maybe they know, that they can't fix it because it's going to be hard. So if you have a habit of something, it's going to be difficult to break. But instead of, maybe obviously that's the work that we do as coaches in working step by step to break that and bring awareness to it first. It's in my nature. So, that's all I can do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Now, there's some things. And so Sugar Bum said, if it's in your nurture, like if you're born with it, I mean, it's in you. If it's in you, it's in you. What I like to do is I always say, well, if we're talking about behaviors, those are adjustable. If we're talking about medical conditions, so, because if you say, oh, I got cancer, I picked it up along the way because of what I ate. True, a lot of poisons in your body, whatever. However, if you do your DNA testing and background, you might find, a few people in your family have actually had cancer. So then is that more kind of what's in you? Now you can change your behaviors to hopefully not get it. Right. Go totally green or whatever, and whatever, however that works. I don't get into that debate if total greenness works or not. But that's an in you thing. And then you take that behavior where you didn't have it in your family, but because what you're putting in your body leads to toxins and poisons and all that, and that lifestyle leads to you having. And so people say, well, see, it's in your nature. That's all you do. That's the only way you eat. You don't take care of yourself. But they exchange the two. But one is actually in your DNA. Another one, well, you adjusted your behavior and end up getting and receiving the outcome. So the outcomes were the same, where the poison was already in your body, it's just not active. Right. And then now, because of the poison you put in your body, you now activated some boom. So that's an example where I say people get the two exchanged.
An interesting one that Beautifully Animated and Sugar Bomb are talking about is anger. That's a good example. What do you think, Doc?
Well, anger. So and this is not written in stone, but what I teach about anger, and just my perspective, anger. So they teach that anger is a secondary emotion. Secondary emotion. Okay.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So if you walk in and catch, maybe a farmer, in a house with a pig or something, and then at first you're in shock. And then you start thinking about the fuck. And then, because now you're having some thoughts and it builds up the anger. So you say, well, secondary to what? Is it secondary to shock? Is it secondary to, now I don't give a fuck what they do with the pig, but not in this room. So the belief was I felt violated because they were in this room. I mean, to the point where you're like, well, did you know what they were doing with the pig? I don't give a fuck what they were doing with the pig. They shouldn't be doing it here. This right here in this space, this is my room. So the anger is about my personal feeling of me being violated. So yes, I don't go against anger as a secondary emotion. Absolutely. But I say anger we feel whenever we feel inconvenienced. So all you have to do is think about all the times you ever felt angry, and I bet it involves being inconvenienced. How many times I have to tell you the same thing over and over and over? The reason I'm getting frustrated and angry is because I've been inconvenienced. I go to the bank during the lunch hour thinking it should be really quick, get in and out during the business hours, and the line is long and the other tellers on break. What idiot manager would have the teller on break knowing this is the busiest time. Well, calm down. Why are you so angry? Because I'm being inconvenienced. You get
Right.
a flat tire, you're in a rush to go somewhere, and you have a good set of May pop tires, may pop at any time, and boom,
Mhm.
you get a flat, and it's like, oh man, stupid tire. It's like the tire is stupid because you're out there kicking yourself in the ground, but because I've been inconvenienced. So all that being said, I believe that, remember that cortisol and all that stuff I was talking about? So some of those
Mhm.
ingredients been pumped into the babies where they do grow up with a certain disposition. And then if you go with the OG belief that you probably were sitting at peace, just sucking your thumb, and then this thing come not and it disturbed your peace. And no matter which way you try to
That's messing up this
turn,
whole
like if you rotate it, no, I'm just saying if you rotate it, and then the mama's like, "Oh, don't and move," and so then you got to move back this other way, and she know I shouldn't because it come again. And so anyway, you learn
How
eventually
about
to,
twins? What about twins
yeah.
that mix?
Oh, they really well.
Just
One might
kidding.
be
That'll be
purpose. Yeah, yeah.
cool.
So right. But so boom. Now
Thanks,
I'm
Danny.
frustrated right from birth. Right from birth, I have that.
Right.
But no one is born knowing anger. At least what I believe. Now mine is
Right.
spiritual stuff because there's some religious and spiritual stuff where people say no. Your entire life was actually pre-written. And now, at a certain age, you'll act out on these behaviors, but God has already set your plan out. So that's why I say mine is spiritual and religious because I'm not uh, too well spoken and I'm not too well versed in that area. So minus that, you don't come in pre-scripted. If minus that possibility or that factual, however you see it, you don't come with that pre-script. So then, how many stories are you told to help add to that script? The first time my father told me that when he took my cousin, on a road trip on the Greyhound, and they stopped at a place where he asked, "Is whites only and blacks and coloreds over here?" He said, "I just really, if you could just give me some water for the baby's bottle." And when he said they filled it with toilet water and said, "There you go." Now that was his experience and his story. But I adopted that story and I found anger with Caucasians who had never done anything to me on the surface, never done anything to me directly, but they benefit from some other systematic stuff. So now I took on this anger that wasn't my story. And I was already, every time I look at a white person. And then you get the opposite where, for a lot of interracial dating where I'm at, where one feels like, man, what happened to your people was wrong and I want to make it right. Or they were on the plantation with mandingos out there and they were like, man, and as they got older, they would pass that on like, you got to get a mandingo. And then boom. Or I believe that you need my help and I have the resources to help you. But now we're talking about someone who's showing empathy and someone who was taught when you try to be nice, you get fucked over. So they're almost, so a person who has empathy and a person who feels like they can't trust, that's a very nurturing relationship. That's a dance. I don't know if you know people who were enemies at first and they fought and then they became best friends. So minus the romance in this situation, it's that enemy, I'm trying to help you, enemy trying to help you. I'm not that enemy. I'm not that, boom. And then there's a connection. And so not just in
Mhm.
interracial dating, but any of those, not dating, but interracial opposites, any of those opposites, which again, why a nurturing thing, so in you can actually be challenged by someone who their nature. So if I was born as a sickly child, I'm often with an ear infection, often with a sinus infection, ear, nose, and throat infection, constantly sick. But then there's a
Mhm.
person who survives certain type of environments, and they don't really get sick that often.
Mhm.
So one is going to say, well, if you want to be better, you got to be better. You got to think that through. You can be better. You choose to be sick. What the fuck?
Right.
What do you mean I choose to be? And so there's conflict because one learned survival, and other person was not doing it on purpose, but they're sick inside. So anyway, I just wanted to add
Right.
that piece about.
No, that's
Mhm,
good. And I think that's an interesting way, even with the anger thing.
mhm,
And of course I'm always like cautious, but whatever. You guys get what I'm saying. So
Right.
I'm not going to speak on everyone's freaking situation, but
Mhm.
there could be someone who, because I don't know if anger, and I like how you pointed out it is a secondary emotion, but
Mhm.
how I don't think there's an anger gene, for example, but I mean, I don't
Right.
know,
Well, no, not
but
an anger gene, but DNA.
emotional.
So you can have explosive disorder. So you can be an angry child
Mm-hmm.
because you like, what in the world? The kid is like 4 years old. I wonder why he's so angry about.
Mm-hmm.
But understanding again those molecules and shifting stuff that's in the brain. So in
Right.
you, so this explosive disorder and the kind of what they call a short fuse. So your
Mm.
capacity to deal with certain things, those capacity tanks are all different.
Right.
So what you eventually learn is your capacity to endure a certain amount. It's almost like a strength test. I could probably, I can watch you do like 80 push-ups and I can get like 7.5. So then it's
Right.
like, whoa, well, what happened? Well, you should, and I was built this way, and you're much bigger than I am. You're big boned, and I should be able to. Now, if you
Right.
put a Whopper in front of me, I'll be able to sit up to that like 80 times to get to that Whopper, right? But the regular 8 times, woo! So again, there are certain the way we're designed or certain things that we have in us, but it doesn't mean that's why we get that way. And so I saw
Right.
BAS Abbas said, she's talking about like even having blackouts to the point of even having blackouts as a child. But
Right.
certain people experience certain traumas that
Mm-hmm.
also, so trauma actually shifts your brain. I mean, I'm not talking
Right.
about it moves it, but what I mean is it's an injury to the brain and it
Right.
actually shifts. So, if you guys want to watch some of those medical TV shows, not Pimple Popper Doctor, not stuff like that, but the trauma where they showed the brain scans and then they
Mm-hmm.
follow that person and have them show them 10 years later. You see the injury. You can even see the shift in the brain. And those shifts, those are not, I'm not talking about just rotating and massaging your head and putting it back. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the shift in the
Yeah.
brain that causes now someone who their functioning part of the brain, the
Mm-hmm.
reasoning part of the brain, okay,
Mm-hmm.
just those two alone, it's been impacted,
Right.
traumatized, and yes, now when a person normally would not have exploded at that point yet, but because of the way the wiring is happening in the brain,
Mm-hmm.
that yes is now we have a 4-year-old who's passing out. Now we have a 10-year-old who's just so, and that trauma could be anything. Remember, there's emotional, physical, psychological, the neglect to
Mm-hmm.
where your parents said, all right, we're about to go to the store, and you ran back in to go get your stuffy animal, and the parent took
Right.
off, not left you alone at home, but just didn't take you to the store.
Right.
And that could be such a traumatic experience. And now, anytime someone is like, the kid's like, you left me. You left me. And the anger is not like, calm down. But the fear that came with being left alone, the fear of what's going to happen to me. That whole
Mm-hmm.
survival thing, the way our brains work, survival. I hear
Yeah.
Mandrell and some of these guys talking about, no, you wouldn't do that. No, you wouldn't do that because you're not able to. You haven't experienced it yet. That muscle
Mm-hmm.
memory hasn't even developed in your brain. So you get out there talking about, yeah, I'll cock you, I'll clock you, and I'll clock it. And if the lion comes, I'm going to take my jacket and wrap it up, and it's on. Man, that lion come out there and you will pass out, shit yourself, and be eaten as a snack because you
That's
haven't worked the memory muscle, to actually be able to do it. So therefore, anyway, so I hope that made sense. BAS is not written
Yeah.
in stone, but that's just an idea where certain people have had certain episodes in life where the wiring has been impacted in the brain, and then boom, it impacts them for a lifetime.
Now I want to ask you, not that they would go back to, let's say, pre that traumatic experience, but there is interventions that can be done to
Mm-hmm.
wake up part of that brain. Now, depending on, I'm just saying it broadly, when there's,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, a inactive part of the brain. So a person is exhibiting behaviors, let's say, that are like cold, very off-putting, very, I don't know. And there's ways to reintegrate the brain.
Mm-hmm.
What about that? Now, not to say they'd go back to normal, like, but that's possible.
Yeah, how much they go back to really depends on how much of the brain was damaged.
Right. Like,
Right.
yeah.
So
if you were in, especially like the physical stuff too, you hear about those when someone's like completely different person.
right.
Those are really interesting. I mean, it's
Even
sad.
people who have pneumonia. You have an episode of pneumonia and it impacts one of your lungs. So they say, oh, yeah, I've always been able to breathe at 100% or 99% oxygen or whatever. But after a case of pneumonia and there's lung damage, you won't have that 99% in that lung, whichever one was impacted. And then that's there's breathing exercises you can do to strengthen it, but you won't get that back.
Right.
So,
right.
So same thing with the brain.
Yeah, or even like skin cells or whatever. But my biggest thing is, and I don't really speak on the clinical side of things, but for people that are already high functioning, they're at, baseline. Now, if they say, this is just how I am, whatever, my mom's the same way, or I grew up that way, so I'm kind of considering both. I take this nature versus nurture and just the epigenetics, including the power behind neuroplasticity, to encourage people to say, okay, is this something that you want to do something about? Now, again, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a light switch, but
right.
and again, I'm not speaking on people that have mental disorders and are seeking medical professionals like Dr. Nakumbe here, right? But
no. I just not medical. I'm just guessing at some stuff, not medical.
Right. But it's interesting, and I'll use myself as an example. Growing up, my dad was really like, if we had to help, like, hey, go get me the flashlight or go get me this. And like, we were kind of just moseying and, he's like, come on, like, let's go. And it's funny because I've caught myself, and even my twin has said this too, like, we're kind of like, let's go, Now I don't like, now this is just me. And I really build up my awareness here that I could just say, well, that's how my dad was, like, or this is the way it should be. Because sometimes people are kind of slow, like move with, a purpose here. But is it helpful in my relationship with my husband, for example, if he's just like, I'm like, gosh, come on, So there's that aspect. I just want to encourage people I don't think it matters. I mean, it does. Again, not talking, clinicals. I'm not talking about the medical medical illnesses and disorders. But if this is a behavior that you have, do you want to just write it off as this is how I was raised, or this is what I saw, which is fine. We can do that. We can do that.
Right.
It's true.
Well, we can. I think we rob ourselves of.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, just because there's so much out there. Remember, if my lens is like right here,
right,
then I think, so I saw my dad every single day do X, Y, and Z. This is what I know. This is what I do. This is what I know. And I saw the good in it. I saw the right in it. So you can't talk me down from it. It's almost, and a shout out to the Dragonfly Jones in the house, Jones' cousin. Hey, what's up? And the World Class is in the house. What's up? So actually, I was just going to say something where, if you grew up where you say, well, we've had polygamy, so more than one wife in the family. But at some point, one of the family members who says, yeah, I'm not trying to get down with that. I don't do that. That's what they were doing. But your whole family, that's what they were doing. So then how come the switch? What happened to the switch? Or reverse. You have one person in the family who's monogamous. You have another person in the family who's gay. And the person who's gay says the person who's, polyamorous. You have one person who's gay, and you have one person who's polyamorous, and the gay person thinks the polyamorous person is wrong. And the polyamorous person says, no, you are wrong. They have competing thoughts. But the person says, well, I identify as gay, but I still believe in only one partner. So that's almost the same thing. Which one is nature? Which one? Because they'll say, well, you didn't sprinkle gayness on me. I didn't become gay. You just don't switch to gay. So they'll say I was born gay. So here we go as an example. I'm saying I have more than one person that I learned. Like there's a certain thing that I learned where I'm able, some people say they have a big heart and lots of love, and a big heart and lots of love, and they can take on multiple people. But you can also say you were born with us an abundance of love and joy to give. So, but see how they're totally different, but they can actually have the same argument. So one says, well, no, you weren't gay when you were born. You that's something you, and then there's the argument of, well, something they were touched and then they became. So I say there's 3 levels. We say, well, you were born, you were touched, and then you were influenced. So 3 different possibilities of how you got there. So the person who just saw a TikTok video the other day saying, oh yeah, that's who I want to be. And I start acting. So like pretending and acting. And then it's like, oh, so were you really that? Well, I just was, but I never had taken it on. See how it just gets so complicated. And was it something that they were born with and or adopted to? So polyamory said, well, I have a big heart. I never realized it. I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of this, and I can take on multiples. At the end of the day, I can find a polyamorous person who says, ooh, this is my primary. Huh? How do you have a primary? And at the end of the day, you take a, who's that dude, 85 years old? Playboy guy, what's his name?
Hugh Hefner?
Hugh Hefner, who went from monogamous, cheated on badly.
Oh, interesting.
Started Playboy to intentionally show the beauty of women and blah 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 blah, but also sexually objectify them, according to this story. And then for him to feel a sense of purpose, he needed or wanted many women. Now, if you look at that story from a forensic perspective, well, he was kind of following this. He got all the money from Mama. Mama took every penny she had, said, dude, I believe in you. Go make your Playboy magazine thing and make it happen. So he already was struggling with what's called inadequacy well before his magazine, but he finally got motivated to do it. And then when he did it, he felt motivated and empowered. But the little boy in him, or the little broken part in him, when the groupie started coming along, you could see him just like grow and blossom, and he felt strong and dominant when he had all the multiple choices. But in his last trimester of life, what was he saying? Just give me my one. Just give me my one. And some people say, oh, he was old and he couldn't keep up with, well, he couldn't keep up for years. But by the time he got done at the end, his last trimester in life, he married one.
That's so interesting.
So if it was in him, because there's both arguments. If it was in him with a big heart and to love multiple sense, and say, well, that's a lifestyle. And that's the other argument. Is it a style, or is it no, that's who I am? So if that's who you are, you can't convert someone if that's who they are. There's no conversion therapy. I mean, if people believe in that, that's great. But is that really possible to convert someone who really is that way? Versus you could take a monogamous person and convert them, because once they realize that they can be poly and especially if they've already practiced some type of poly behaviors, have more than one car, more than one this and more than one that, and their whole conditioning has always been about more than one. A pimp is really about conditioning. And they'll use your own DNA against you. You were made for that. I mean, didn't you say your grandfather was a business person? Yeah, and he worked hard, and your hard work is in your life. That's been in your life. So you can do 4 stunts tonight. You can get out there and do them tricks tonight. You know hard work. No, Daddy, you know what I'm talking about. That's not, baby. Hard work has been in your life. And believe it or not, she's motivated to pull 4 stunts for that night because she knows hard work has been in her family. But why is she doing that type of work, right?
Is
So, but
it that that's in her family, hard work in her family,
right,
or is it the belief, which is
right.
another side of it,
Which,
that
hold on, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna try and find something, an article. But go ahead.
okay, go ahead. And I was wondering if you're cool with it, Dr. Nakumbe, if we can play the last, we're gonna skip the second video. If we can play the last video, CBN, and then drop the link. If I want to see if World Class wants to come up, because I know he's always fascinating to talk to. But if he wants to,
I tend to be more nurture rather than nature, but I still do think there's an element of nature. But I think the big piece of why I'm more pro-nurture in terms of attributing character traits, etc., is because if it is nature, you have no control over it either way. So it's not helpful or productive to think it's more nature. So I think from a belief standpoint, if we believe that we are more in control and that our environment and the things that we expose ourselves or surround ourselves with contributes more to the outcomes that we want to produce, then it gives us more of an internal locus of control, just like it's more under our control, or at least the perception of our control, that we can get to where we want to go.
what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You said you're gonna bring them up.
Yeah, if we can drop the link in the chat, see if World Class wants to come up, and if he doesn't want to, if one person wants to come up, only if you want to, World Class. You don't have to, but you had a face emoji, and I want to see your take on it. But
What was you saw his face? What happened?
he just put a little emoji. It was like the
shaking my damn head.
No, the nature versus nurture one.
Oh.
I just want to see his take on it.
So yeah, so I think so. While we're waiting to see, so I missed that last clip, and I apologize. And I actually watched it a couple times before we got on the show. One of the things to consider, the environment you're in is about your survival. So there's certain things that is not really about if you choose that or not. And then, but then it's, are you able? Are you physically able? Are you mentally able? Is your DNA designed? So now let's look at dogs. Certain dogs, they will say, oh, awesome this and awesome that, but not great for heated conditions or regions, not good for cold regions. So the actual functioning and ability of the dog is blah, 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 blah. For certain conditions, they can't survive because of the way they're built or their DNA or what's in them. Right. So I think that plays a big role in understanding. Like you can say that I can adjust to anything, but what you have in you, who you are is who you are, and that would and can impact things that you do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I like to, I guess it depends, but what is it that you're saying is who you are? Like what is that aspect? But also too, there's a quote, this is not from me, but that I read, that says we overestimate the problem and we underestimate our ability to deal with it. And of course, I'm not stupid. I'm not saying, oh, you're 45 and you haven't lifted or worked out in months or years. Yeah, if you believe you can totally compete next year. Like
right. But there's belief out there if you get the mindset. Now, can you physically do it? But if you get the mindset, now which comes first? I won't say which is more powerful. There's the chicken versus the egg, which came first. But then which is more powerful, your mind or your body? Because if you believe you can do it, is it possible you can do it? I mean, I believe I can lift 500 pounds, but I wouldn't be able to get 5 pounds up off the ground, right? But if I do the practice and the practice and the practice and the practice and the practice, so I can match my belief system with my physical capabilities. That's what makes it possible, not just oh yeah, tonight I'm going to do it and I haven't done anything in 10 years.
Right. That's the manifestation kind of thing where it has to have intention and action. But the belief in the mind and body is very interesting because, and I think I hate this phrase, but I'm gonna say it. We sleep on the brain, people. We sleep on it. Like we do not realize how powerful it is and how little we use it and let it run us, but we let it run us, and if we are intentional with our consciousness, now of course that's a whole nother thing, just being intentional, like what does that mean? Well, that's for another show. But what you do, like your cells and everything, your body as a bigger part is doing what it knows because it's just been sent messages the whole time, and if we're telling our brain or telling our body, well, we're telling ourselves, but it's us telling our body that we can't do this, and we're not going to do it.
Right.
We're not.
And
it won't happen.
And we're still only using a portion of we're repeating the same thing. So we're not really stretching the brain. We're just repeating kind of the same messages, living the same day in and day out, same message, but not really tapping into different parts of the brain. And that's one of the things I talk about with my clients, stimuli. And a conversation at 10 a.m. in my office versus a conversation after work at 5 p.m. in my office versus a conversation at 2 in the morning, or a statement, that morning, or that I didn't mean to call you a bitch, and I know you didn't, and I love you, and I love you too, and I'm sorry. That's way different at 2 in the morning, bitch. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to say, but it's just different, the stimuli. Even YouTube, how many people kind of got into the sensation of, I was watching Hank in the Basement the other day, they were talking about this, the sensation of making money and pimping people and all this other stuff, and those who are really wanting to provide authentic content, and those who are just hitting talking points. But then someone out of the blue said, yeah, and they get so wrapped into it, thinking that they're really doing it for the money, only to find out it's an addiction. Like they can't get off the YouTube. Like they just can't. They're just sucked in. And if you ask that person 5 years previous, well, would you have, why is these people on these goddamn thing every night? That's stupid. I wouldn't be on it every goddamn night, every night and every night. And that's stupid. I wouldn't be on it every night. And then ding, they didn't hit that part of the brain to where now an addiction that they totally weren't expecting to deal with, not understanding like, oh, addiction runs in the family, but they think of addiction as only to alcohol, only to crack, only to bubble booties or whatever, but only to find out, no, addiction is addiction, relationships, love, meth, all those things, it's addiction. So then now they're hooked on YouTube and trying to get all the content out, and wanting to be relevant. So they're hitting talking points instead of other stuff because they're more worried about, like Facebook, when that first came out, you got to get the likes. And I actually hate myself because I don't seem to get the likes. Being left on red. Before, was that really a thing? If you sent the text back in the day, way back in the day, before they had the red mark, like before you knew they read it, it was just a check, whatever. Yeah. I think Skycap or Skytel, whatever that page it was, they could tell you if it's red. But before that, you didn't know if it was red. And then you go into that stage of Facebook and other ones where it's like, you left me on red. How come you didn't? How come you didn't? Whoa. It's like, what's wrong with you? And they themselves don't know, like, how did I get here? That's what I ask my clients, like, how did we get here? I don't know, because normally I don't even get down. I used to think people were stupid for doing that stuff.
Right. And as we welcome World Class, I want to say,
World Class, what's up?
Dr. Nakumbe and Coach K, what's going on?
Hey.
Nothing much. Honor and blessing to have you up here, sir. What's going on in your world?
What do you think about this?
I have to ask questions because I have to be honest. I absolutely loathe this topic. I hate it. I've hated it every time I've seen it. It really irritates my soul. I've seen it over the span of like 5-6 years. I've seen it like briefly. So I'm gonna ask y'all because I like y'all. What is the premise of this? Why does this exist? What is this nature versus nurture? So I don't assume. Because the only person that really gave me clarity was Sugar Bomb. Lord bless her soul.
In this chat or?
No, this was on my chat, my live stream about maybe a month ago, and I kind of forgot what she meant. It was something more trivial than what I thought it was from what I was assuming. So just because how I look at stuff literal, so I'm like, what the hell? So explain, like, can y'all please explain to me what? Because I seen the last guy, the video, and I'm just like, what the hell are you talking about?
That was very general. That was kind of to just Yeah, because obviously this is a very extensive topic of that scientists and researchers have all disagreed in, and obviously with epigenetics that has transformed. The reason, to be honest with you, that I thought of this was because of the up and coming person that's floating around all of these videos, Princella.
Okay.
So I just wanted to broach the topic with Dr. Nakumbe, but of course, this is our niche. We do mental health, so I wanted to just talk to a normal, regular audience about what this
Yeah.
even means, but also from my standpoint. Obviously, Dr. Nakumbe is going to bring his expertise. I always want to empower my my clients, and that's the message I always bring. So if you thought it was
Right.
this, it actually might not be that, or whatever. Does that make sense?
Okay.
My I won't say short answer. The way I see it is this way: you could be born a monkey, but if I put you in the chicken cage, you're gonna eventually adopt the behaviors of being a chicken. And however much you limit yourself, but if the chickens only keep you in the chicken cage, that's all you're gonna know. And at some point you'll have to want to get out of the chicken cage to be more than that. And even caught on a couple of your shows, World Class, that how much knowledge. I even put in the thing on your wall. I'm like, whoa, I ain't never heard no shit like this before. But then if you were to ask me how much have you investigated, then I'm like, oh, but I haven't. Then how in the hell are you gonna hear about it then? So, when it comes to this nature versus nurture thing, I think it doesn't matter. The only thing that's going to stop me from my nurturing, what's in me, is my ability to learn or how I learn. Maybe I have a developmentally ability, but doesn't mean I can't learn at all. I just have to learn at the pace or the style that works best for me. But then I can't have the excuse. I can, but it won't be beneficial to have the excuse. I didn't know and no one ever told me, and that's just crazy. And that's not what we do over here. That just means you've limited yourself over there. You decided to stay in the chicken coop. And then whatever they're feeding you in the chicken coop, that's the messaging that you're taking. That's the whatever you're taking, good, bad, or otherwise. But that doesn't mean that's who you were. And you decided to change into that, and you decided not to look further, so that's on you. And that's not about who you are. Or that's not about it's not about your internal, it's your limited beliefs and your unwillingness or laziness to explore further.
So this is not nature versus nurture is really not about neither one of them. It's really about people's inquiry or inquisitiveness about the I guess behavioral outcomes.
That's how I see it, because if the argument, or I think why people get up in arms about it, is because they want to know, do you behave this way because that's what's in your brain, like that's your DNA. But again, I've seen people who come from an entirely different society have to adjust, and the DNA determines how they adjust, not if they can adjust, but how. Pigment. How long would I need to be in the Arctic before my skin gets lighter?
Okay.
Right? So my in me is my brown skin, a couple of shades darker than Mandrell. So I get to dodge some of the yellow skin comments, right? But then how long would it take before I would be that if you send me to the Arctic, or if you put Mandrell in the sun, how long would it take? So that's his DNA stuff, but that doesn't impact his behavior. That doesn't determine his behavior.
Okay, so my standard, I get what y'all saying. So my standard response to this has been, I've had conniption fits to this. I'm like, there's no possibility for you to nurture without nature. Nature includes atoms, the quantum level. Like, so it's like, why does this exist? It irritates me so bad.
Right.
Before you can have any type of behavior, you need a fundamental, primordial, whatever we're gonna call it, God, Allah, nature, literally, to provide any type of civilization or mother or environment. So it always irritated me. So now I understand. So this is people's inquisitive nature of understanding why does a sociopath become a sociopath. And I think
yes,
if you study either psychology or neurology, you quickly will find that environment plays the biggest role on a lot of, just
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking, environment plays a ridiculous role. Now, you get within your environment, and I always default to the 80-20 rule because it's usually about right. You'll have your 80%, your bulk of people that will kind of give you varying degrees within a framework. Then you'll have your
Mm-hmm.
extreme lower 10 and you'll have your extreme upper 10, which makes up your
Mm-hmm.
20%. That's going to be, they're going to be not anomalies, but because you expect them, but you're going to have your extreme ends. So, why does a 6'4" guy, does a certain thing, and why does a guy with blue eyes does a certain thing? We don't, I mean, to get into those specifics, doesn't really mean much. Before, how I
Mm-hmm.
look at it is like if you just study, if you if you have the natures, that's the thing too. Why do you have people studying? Why you have people that don't study? Like that's the thing right there. So is that I guess that's why it irritates me the most because I don't fit the mold of the, the conversations that I be having because of where I'm
Mm-hmm.
from and the environment that I've been in. It took dramatic things. I was talking to somebody recently. Sometimes it's going to take, I think it was podcast. It's going to take some dramatic stuff for you to change the course. So I've
Yes.
done dramatic things, like absolutely dramatic things to change. But then it goes in: is that my nature? Or is that how I was raised? It's it would be both, but the nature of me really pushes the nurturing. Like
Mm-hmm.
because of who I am, because of what I am, I can. It's always been like. My backing. That's always been like my wall. Like I can always
Mm-hmm.
bounce off of my nature to just not. I don't really have. I've really disconnected, so I don't attach to bad outcomes that much. So if something
Can we?
bad happens, I really don't be. Go ahead, go ahead. I don't really don't be
Oh,
caring.
sorry. No, that's interesting. And I think with what you just said, can we play the second video, CBN? Because this goes into the laws of behavior genetics.
First law is that all behavioral traits are heritable. Second law is that effects of genes are stronger than effects of families, which are often weak to zero. The third law is there's a lot of variation that is neither genetic nor familial. Now, people have a lot of trouble wrapping their heads around this because everyone thinks, oh, well, there's heredity, there's environment. The more heredity, the less environment, and vice versa. But actually, that turns out not to really be true. At least if you consider the environment to be something that you could really look at or measure, like the effects of families. And when you have even identical twins who come from an egg splitting into two, there could be a mutation that develops in one fertilized egg and embryo, but not in the other. There are mutations that develop as in our bodies as we grow and develop that could be different in the two twins. There could be factors in brain development that the genes can't control down to the last synapse. First law is that all behavioral traits are heritable. Second law is...
Thanks, CBN. So
Yeah.
what do you think about that in terms of that sounds like the third side of it? Well, that doesn't really mention, it's kind of explaining why it is the way that it is, aside from consciousness or something we intentionally, a behavior but then again, that could still be nature or nurture. You know what I mean? Like how we express it and how strong it is. You know what I mean? But what do you
Mm-hmm.
think
I
about
have
what
a.
you said?
I actually have an answer for that. But I don't want to go super galactic deep. I just think a part of. I really don't like. I think I'll equate it to this. The way I understand it is even your location, your longitude, latitude, complements who you are. So I equate to what he was saying, like with blades of grass. Why does one blade of grass grow way taller than the next blade of grass? Could be just as consistent as what shade is one blade of grass in as the sun is making its revelations of throughout the year. One get more light than the other. It could be an anthole closer to one than the other. You know what I'm saying? Like he was saying about twin. That was a good point he made when he brought up twins, same egg, split, brain development growth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One mutation happens in the other. But I think
Yeah.
it also speaks to you have your like the law of polarity teaches you that you have your own being, or law of oneness, I should say. That's what we learn in universal law.
Mm-hmm.
Each individual cell goes through its own cycle. in our body. So that you can have certain cells like be in the same environment with a pathogen in your body, and certain cells get into certain cells don't. I think
Hmm.
I think just because we are God, we're super big cells as human beings, individual people. It just we so interact, we so like invested into our interactions and outcomes that we don't look at the nature of things and see that that is a normal variant. Like variants are normal, and like my point though is that I think your environment, or like I said, longitude and latitude, where you are, has everything to do with who you are as well. Which he spoke to in terms of environment, but it does dictate. Like I've been outside when I was young by myself. I had all that space. Like I was outside of like both my grandmothers lived next door to each other. There was nothing
Hmm.
between me and all that room but a gate. But that was the only space. I was the only person to occupy that space because I was the only person in that age range. Whereas
Hmm.
there could have been another little boy. There was another little boy like around the corner from me, my age. He didn't have any gate, but he had one house. So I had the familiarity of knowing I can go to one grandma's house, eat out their house, but that little environment made me who I am. I fought
Hmm.
every tree I hit with a stick because it was mine, because they were both my grandmothers. I hopped every part of that gate I put my fingers through. I ran my back into, you know what I'm saying? Whereas him, he
Hmm.
didn't have no gate. He would always just leave. He wouldn't challenge. So those, I think that's what happens in the embryo, like inside the mom's womb.
Hmm. Hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
baby is sharing a space, and conflict of that conflict of running into a competitor, your sibling, kind of stimulates some of those mutations in one versus the other.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, which is so fascinating. And
Right.
I love this conversation, but also, I mean, of course it can get to what point, right? Like, what does this do for us? How is this helpful? And especially when it brings up the twins, obviously. But now, thank you, Dr. Nakumbi, you ruined that for me, because when I was seeing the egg split, I was thinking of your guys' theory. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm
But
taking it serious.
yeah. But it goes to what World Class was saying, because you can share in this membrane, but yet it actually, because of the shift, I mean, can actually create a shift, create those
Mm-hmm.
molecules I was talking about. The big argument is about what people are trying to figure out: is it live or is it Memorex, right? Is it because of your nature, your genetics, or is it because of the nurturing that influences you? What made you do what it is that you do? See, when we have these interviews and I'm asking people, so what led you to this? That's one thing. But then when we do family history, was there alcohol, mental health, addiction in your family? That's suggesting that this was passed on because the person wasn't alive, so it had to be passed on through DNA. But not every single atom in your body is going to be passed through the same. And because of those shifts in those atoms and changes in your molecules, you won't come out exactly the same as the person before you. And as I
Mhm.
said, you can skip a generation, you could do different things, and or the way you experience life impacts you a certain way. So that loud boom, one person might be like, damn, I'm determined to find out what that boom noise were. And they have an exploring type life. The other one was scared to death by the boom, and they don't ever want to explore anything because they're afraid of what they might find. So
Yeah, I
a
agree.
Right.
psychologist, yeah, so a psychologist would be sitting there twiddling their thumbs trying to figure out, well, wow, that's profound. Was that because of the way, was that? But I don't think there's really enough study out there to really determine. So that's where that third version, where they said it's intertwined, it's a mixture of
Mm-hmm.
both. Now we need to figure out which one is the lead. So that's what
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah, but I think that's a better way to look at it. Which one is primary, which one is secondary versus, because
Hmm.
I still look at it, I'm like, I get it now, but I still don't like nature versus nurture. Like
Hmm.
it's like the left side of my face fight the right side of my face. Like it doesn't really make any sense. I look at it nature as like we'll get a computer. It has so many capabilities, but it depends on what you can, how you use it. So the
How you
nurture
you're
is
right, how you program it and how you use it.
Yes.
how you use
Hmm.
it. So um
Yes.
the nature is there to facilitate, and The nurture ability is there for, skills and add-ons, and yeah, it's like an add-on as compared to
Right.
in comparison. Nature in itself, by nurturing in itself, is extremely, because it's no different from teaching. It's no different from mentoring. It's the same type of. It has the same nature as those things, right? So,
Right.
it is a particular craft that is needed for one more than that. Then that's primary. Like, who needs nurturing more? Able-bodied men and women, or children, or people that are injured, people that are elderly. Who needs nurturing more? Hey, it could be a able-bodied man that needs to be nurtured more than a child. It's
Absolutely.
relative, right? It's relative, right? So
Right.
I think that's more
Yeah.
specific.
And
Nice.
it's also, I think this comes into play when you talk about, and we've mentioned this either last show or show before, Dr. Nakumbe, about just parenting, and especially during the formative years, before 6, how important that child's development is, in the experiences it has with its mom, and later on, and how that's, manifests basically later on in life with anxiety and attachment and things like that. But with the computer example, I like using that, or I'll even use iPhone, because now, like, we don't even think about it's more relevant for my teen clients, but
So,
it's like, no, go ahead.
Take heat, Quincy. Quincy's in the house, and take
Hey,
heat's in the
guys.
house. Hello, everyone. So
Thanks
that
for being
abuse,
here.
that absolutely. Thank you for being here. Yes. That before 6 stage.
Yeah.
So I just want to highlight, if you take abusive situation or traumatic situation, the way you are designed can lead to some type of trauma response. So if you're used to being yelled at, and then you take that 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 9-year-old, and when you talk to them, hey, huh, or what? Hey, what are you thinking? I'm talking to you, huh? But you could take that same 7-year-old and then insert some messaging later that, pending how they receive it, their ability to receive it, chew on it, eat it, process it. And those same people who've been dipped in the well can become geniuses because they learned how to overcome this behavior that was managed by the internals, but now they've added stuff to help them manage it. So who actually put that limitation on you? Now there's some things that say, you can't walk because of whatever, and but then we hear magical stories about how people put their mind to it, and then they were learning to walk again. Or you hear about those people who were in a car accident and the mother saw her kid trapped into that car, and for some reason she has no idea how she did it, but she lifted that car. Okay, so we hear about these things where people limit themselves. And so again, the question is, why did you limit yourself? Where does that come from? And can you go past that?
I'm gonna throw an extra layer to this, with our remaining time. What about quantum physics?
I love it.
Class, or I thought you had mentioned it at one point. I'm sure you've mentioned it many times, or something, what's involved with it, but I know I've heard you allude to it. So what do you think about that?
Oh, I thought you meant the member in the community quantum physics. I was like, oh.
Quantum.
Wait, there's
I'm like, he said,
there's
oh
a
yeah, I love
person?
that. Oh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
quantum.
Wait,
Shout out to quantum. Yeah, quantum metaphysician. Yeah, she be in the chat.
Quantum University.
Oh, I probably when I see it, yeah.
Yeah, I like what
Go
they
ahead.
I like what they done, because I think people. That's why I kind of got out of the religious conversations, because I'm like, quantum physics, they have already proven the existence of God. They said that we broke down every atom, like, to everything. Like, we can break everything down to an atom. All the atoms are exactly the same. They said they cannot there's no way to distinguish an atom in a pencil or grape or raindrop. They said the only thing that it seems to be is that the atom intends to be the thing that it is. And they said when we observe the freaking atom, and this is across the planet, all the quantum physicists are saying the same thing. The atom seems to change upon observation. So
Like
there
the
is a
energy.
yeah, it is actually able to like is that it lets you know, like once you see scientists say that, it lets you know you're not crazy when you know somebody, you feel like somebody watching you.
Oh,
Right.
I didn't think about that. Ugh.
You know, somebody's like been talking about you. It's like, yeah, some energy coming my way to the body. So, you know, and our atoms have that ability to receive attention. So and then it speaks to what are we in the middle of now? People have an addiction for attention. Maybe a crave to get back to their nature
Right.
because I think we've been getting a vast amount of people have been getting anti or pseudo nurturing, or or maybe it is nurturing, but it's nurturing for you to be a consumer or for you to be a worker bee or whatever the hell. But yeah, I think quantum physics is truly amazing. I mean, I gave what I took away from it for a conversation standpoint, but
Mm-hmm.
the technology is fascinating. It proves everything that all the ancient religions have been teaching for a very long time, and it allows a lot of people to look at religion as a science and not as some damn dogma. Because when you just take things principally, and a little bit of financial literacy taught me this: when you take a principle and you apply it, because like there can be no extraction of interest where that has not been previously placed principle. If you use it as a principle and then work off their principle like you would $1,000, like anything,
Mm-hmm.
you can and then take relative interest. Now I'm saying this as relates to like quantum physics
Right.
and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You'll see these things correlate and correspond proportionately and congruently in your life, and then you can just look at life as a scientist. When I go into a Bible, I can look at each verse as a principle and apply it accordingly. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I invest if I invest $10,000 in a 401k, but then I invest $100,000 at the racetrack, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I'm not accurately placing principle according to that's not really the that's not if I'm the same guy doing that, that's something wrong with how I'm applying things. So we apply each Bible verse, each surah in the Quran, each Bhagavad Gita, each script in the Bhagavad Gita. If I'm applying it correctly, which is what these religions teach, which is what quantum physics teach, is a correlating response to things' environment. Things will correlate with its environment, proportionate to
Mm-hmm.
its polarities, proportionate to its making, and
Right.
to an extent, if that being or that polarity isn't adequate, and then it'll cease to exist or it'll extinguish. You know what I'm saying? So that
Right.
usually what permeates um, in the results of everything. If you're not equipped, then you need to get out of that environment, which goes back to environment. People don't want to believe they're
It
a part of the
does.
environment,
Yeah.
but yeah, people don't want to believe they
Well.
are, but it's extremely important. It's extremely
Mhm.
important. Like when I got that from my and I end it here, but I got that from my
Mhm.
mentor when he said it's just the concept of what he said to me, and I'm pretty sure you guys have heard it. He talked to me about shortening my learning curve. He said, "Bro," he said, "turn your car into a classroom.
Hmm.
Turn your car into a classroom. Turn on stuff that's gonna help you think." And I'm like, I never freaking thought of that. Like I'm in the
Hmm.
car a lot,
Hmm.
and then I can hear way better in the car than I can in the classroom. Like this is actually
Hmm.
better to learn in the car, and I'm
Hmm.
on my way to something I got to do, and I'm killing my downtime. Okay, great. So it just gave me an idea on how to approach environment, and it makes a big difference.
Right. And make
Hmm.
it more for you. Um, but that was a level of your control that was within your
Right.
control, but still making it for you. And then what came because of that? And the reason I asked you about,
Mhm.
what you think about it is because this is another, layer, level, or however, I don't know how you want to add it to this conversation. If we were to lay them out, but where does this come into play in how we're acting and what we're doing, even when we're unaware of it? You know, what am I doing now, or what's my environment because of, you know, I don't know, the way I've been thinking, or you know what I mean? I'm speaking very broadly, but I like this stuff because I'll say, you know, to be honest, is because it brings a level of control back to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what you're saying.
Which is what, I mean, sure, there's a lot of things I can't control, but I don't really look at that. I'm like, what can I control? And then I'll
Yeah.
go on from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It definitely scams. Drive Time University. Absolutely. I like the way you put that. And the way I equate what you say is what you just explained, Coach K, is that I think nurture is just a subsection of nature, because I again, things are relative, things are corresponding. Like we have to deal with things correspondingly, because there can be a time that destruction to destroy can just be as important as nurturing. I have to. A lot of these habits, people are like, oh, I need to develop new habits. No, you really need to destroy the other ones as well.
That's a good point. And I know this is you know, I think Atomic Habits is a very popular book for a reason. And he talks about this because if you are trying to pick up a habit of working out, or maybe you want to lose weight, so you're working out, but if you're still eating the same garbage, maybe if you know, you've heard of people stop eating dressings and things like that, or they stop drinking, I don't know, we say pop here, but soda, whatever. You know, that could also be just as beneficial, but again, it's how you want to look at it. And that's kind of what I wanted people to get from this show, is that it's actually not so white or black, black or white. Oh my God, who's black or white?
Is that a pun because of you and I, the black and white?
No. I realized my brain was like, that does not sound right. How do I?
Right.
No. But you know, it's actually not that simple. And really, because this has been talked about on all these different shows about men are this by nature, I'm like, okay, let's actually look at this.
Right.
You know?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Because I don't think we should just accept this is what people are, this is who people are by nature, especially when, what year are we talking about? Where did they grow up? You know, there's just so much to it to just say every man, every woman is like this. You know what I mean?
I've acknowledged this on my show plenty of times. For I think over the last year and a half, we live in artificial and synthetic environments. I think
artificial is making me cringe. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
These are not natural environments. If people didn't notice, you know, streets, like concrete streets, don't just grow naturally on Earth anywhere. Nor street lights or red lights. So these are synthetic and artificial environments. And when you study it, I really, growing up, I really was not a compassionate person or empathetic. Well, I wasn't empathetic with other people, but it allowed me to realize when I studied how much your environment has an effect on you, not only just your environment, because that's one part of it, is the time of like your exposure, how much time you're exposed to stuff is the other part. Because you could change your environment, but then bring it with you. You can bring it with you and then still get the same information and still get the same input. Like if I have bad habits in Detroit and I go to Kansas, I'm still have and eat the same.
Still bring you to
bring it with you. So you'll have the freaking the same exposure. In a different so environment. If we're in these environments and we're going and all of us are less than 100 years old, and it's kind of been the deal, the radio, the loud music, the bright lights, the flashing lights, it's kind of been a thing for the last 100 years, since the 20s. Now since the 20s, the 20s, you can go and see big New York lights and all of that's been going on for a while, and that has had effect on us. And for us now to retroactively say that this is our nature it's all a lie, because you don't know that. Like TV is like a less than 100 years old, and we have spent look, at least color TV, and we've spent a ridiculous amount of time in front of it as compared to 5 generations ago or 6 generations ago, right? So it's a farce for people to go, this is men's nature, or this is women's nature. And then you go to my topic. A lot of y'all don't know how to read no damn way. So you don't know what you're reading in history anyway. You don't know what you're reading. You don't read history. Don't know how to read. That's that part. So you don't even know what's going on in history and how people actually operated in the 1200s and the 1100s and 800 AD, et cetera, et cetera. So you really don't know people's nature.
Right.
And so
Right.
which is how we do things now. Oh, I want your attention, so I'm gonna slander you. Like we're forever six. I'll say something negative about you, say something because that's the only way I know how to do is antagonize. Again, comes up in the environment. I watch a lot of people, a lot of families who they come in. You know how we do, Dr. Nakumbe. We come in, hey, nigga, I ain't heard from you, nigga.
Right.
What you been? Where you been at? And then, we antagonize. It's love, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the skills we have now, right?
Right.
We don't
Right.
know what our ancestors did 600 years ago when they came in. I don't know. They probably, who knows what they did, but that's what we
Right.
do now. So then we'll go, well, that's how men are. We are. No, this is your environment. This is your, I love this statement. It's old. It's a cliche. But it's so true. You can never make a second first impression.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes
Mm.
the first impression lasts for 20 years. Sometimes your first impression lasts for 30 years. This is my only interaction with guys as a young female is men coming in the house with my mom and they leave us and she cries.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because I've never seen nobody else. I just see the guys that my mom let around me and I've gotten to know the guys that are in my family, which is probably the same type of people. So that first impression can last for a long time and lead one to believe this is how males really are. And not, again, goes to being exposed to more, or actually going back to the 80-20 rule, you could be on one of those far ends, in the extreme category and not join us in 80 in normal life. People.
This, like like you only see this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm in a rant, but
No.
No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
it's interesting. It's very interesting. Y'all brought up one of my favorite topics. I did a whole live on it on epigenetics, which now I understand why I brought it up and how its effect. I like literally went into it, like the what is it called? Methylene levels. What is it called? I forgot. I forgot the level. It's just a certain. It's a certain.
Oh yeah, it's methylene. Yeah, you talking about the it's methylene. That's the right word.
Methylene, methylene levels, etc. Those things that
I won't say DNA, but it's
yeah. Because epigenetics is about gene expression. They say you can't really change your genes, but it changes how your genes express themselves, which is why I talk a lot about environment, because if you have like
methylation, I guess.
methylation, that's what it is. I said methylation. If you have the same, people think, and I've heard doctors say this, and we in my community we say this because we get rid of diseases in my community. There's no such thing as hereditary genes. It's hereditary diets. And if you eat the same thing and you're in the same environment and you like I was talking before, you greet with antagonizing terms the same way, you build the same chemistry in the bodies, the same time, the same way, each generation you'll get the same diseases.
Right.
I.e., you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. Good.
They don't know, like our brain doesn't know if it's good or bad. It just does what it's supposed to do because of what it's being reinforced.
Exactly.
Over and over again. And that goes to that exposure also. Just even talking, because a lot of people think, just confidence, that's something big for the young people. And it's like, okay, well, if you think that you're fixed, well, actually you don't build confidence that way you're not born with it. And also too, if you think you're fixed and you can't be good at something, well, you're definitely not going to build confidence because you're not going to go out and do it and then get better at it and fall, of course, but get better at it. And that's actually what builds confidence. But we don't know that when we have these types of ideas that I think is common amongst everyone in society, is that we're fixed, but it's not the truth.
Coach K, what'd you call that? What'd you say? Methylation?
Well, I don't. Yeah, that's what I did a quick Google, but I don't know if that's right.
Okay, I mean, because I've always said methylene. Also, when we're talking about, especially when we're talking about psychopaths, and the neuro pieces, So that whole DNA change and all that, like um, from 0 to 3, the what the mom ate and how it's pumped into the baby and how it changed. So um, so
That's
that's another whole, yeah. And when you talk about quantum stuff, it's another whole level. Like I don't, if you ever wake up before your alarm clock, right?
yeah.
It's like, man, or you ever think about something you ever think about someone you haven't thought about in a long time, and all of a sudden, bling,
Yes.
they show up in your
That
message
happened when I
thing.
was a server all the time. I
Yeah,
swear.
yeah. How
What did
does
you
light
say?
work? How does this whole YouTube thing work? How does my voice transfer through this?
That's
Right? Particles, because we talk about breathing and getting all the filters, and our nose here has to filter, but yet we're sharing this space with like dust mites or whatever particles and stuff. But lasers and all these different things, like how, so it's a totally different level of understanding ourselves, and people want to dispute it. In my field, there are people who want to dispute it because they
I know.
don't
I was gonna say,
understand it.
wonder what
Yeah,
your because
yeah, because
epigenetics was disputed for a while too, wasn't it?
right,
Yeah, it
yes,
was. It was.
yep. And the best some people can come up with, well, was the combination, and see the thing, but people really didn't know and don't know. So you just have a lot of what I call clinical talking points. But you won't believe how many people actually are able to find a deeper level of themselves when they explore some of the other type of, because psychology and meta stuff, they just don't go together. Psychology and quantum stuff just don't go together. But I
Right.
challenge to say, well, who says that you can't learn from them both and adjust
Right.
accordingly and adjust accordingly? Because
Well,
Yeah.
psychology is really about me and here, but it doesn't
right.
do anything for outside of me. But yet we're saying we can be influenced by an environment. But part of that environment is understanding how this all works.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of both. That's, I mean,
Hmm.
ultimately
Yeah.
why I do coaching because, well, obviously I'm not, again, I'm not helping people. This is not clinical on my
Hmm.
end, but I want to be able to help people and not medicalize everything because sometimes
Hmm.
I think it, and that's not frowned upon to try these different things and
Hmm.
talk about, the quantum physics and the quantum side of
Hmm.
things.
Yeah.
I
Energy
know some
movement.
people.
Hmm. Energy movement. But if I'm afraid of energy, I don't know if you ever had healing touch massage where they don't touch you at all, but
I
yet they
haven't.
can find the energy spots in your body and move energy through your body.
Is it
But if
like
I'm
chakras
stuck
or
on, yeah, and chakra stuff, voice
yeah,
chakras and different things. But if I'm stuck on it has to be this one way, like it's not real, I'll ignore all those things. I'll miss a whole bunch of things because I'm stuck on it has to be this one way, which I think what world class is talking about is like, how can it just be, and people who try to push it, they really push it to lock you into certain belief systems. And where does that come from? And if it goes against the way I've always been raised or what I was taught, so then I say, well, then you have to go learn from yourself, and are you willing to do that?
right, right. Well, and I know we're probably gonna hit final thoughts here, but I will say, and science is supposed to ask questions, right, and to fail and to get things
Hmm.
wrong.
Hmm.
So it's interesting. I don't want to go into too much, but it's interesting when
Hmm.
I just want to stress the importance in that video too with environment, what you're eating, are you exercising, hydration, like all those things, are you getting those right? Like even with my clients, it's like, okay, we're going to talk about what you want to work on, but first, are you getting these things right? Or at least striving towards that? What about your sleep? And it's
Mhm.
like, if we can't, and no, I'm not saying you, doc, but for, I guess, the field, it's like, instead, let's try these things before we just push a pill. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
that's I'm saying very simply, very simply.
Hmm.
But anyway, world class, you want to
Mhm.
give us your final thoughts?
Yes, definitely. I appreciate y'all for having me up. Shout out to
Thanks for coming.
BMU. Shout out to everybody being on the channel. Um, yeah, thanks for asking me to come up. I think again, environment plays a big part. I think the first environment that I was taught about was the 6 inches between your ears. You got to win that environment.
Mhm.
Or you, or everything is going to crumble. News flash: the body is an organization. The skin is an organ. It has little organizations in it called organs, and the aspect of controlling your environment and creating a healthy environment flows to and fro with that. Your mouth, your brain, your airways, your immune system, your heart, your lungs, left brain, right brain, your spine. All of these are organizations, and down to your cells. And each one of your cells is an organization. So these are things that play into the aspect of nature. So I mean, nurturing. So you have to nurture each one of these organizations to be in its primal state or its preferred state, i.e., the nature, to find out what is it made of. I always explain to people, you can Google it. Your body's made out of 102 minerals. How many? Like if you have a staples business, you need paper, you need shelves, you need to fund your business and supply your business with what it needs. The 102 minerals that your body is made of, how much of that are you giving it, right? Because ultimately, what are you supplying the next generation with in your distribution aspect of your organization, which is called your sexual reproductive system. So those are things that play into it for us to have a next generation to understand nature and nurture are the same thing, because whatever, and this is why religion stays, whatever exists to create us and allow us to be here is nurturing us. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. It's just not a versus. It's on a level we can't understand because it doesn't have eyes and ears and in the bosom to breastfeed from. You know what I'm saying? I can't go and breastfeed off the moon in the sun and we don't appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? But it's
Yeah.
literally the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good conversation. It's definitely a great conversation. Appreciate y'all having me up. This is the type of topics I like. I like
I
science. It's
know.
my favorite spot, and self development. I'm not big on personal development. I think people getting stuck with the prosperity stuff. But
Yeah, for sure.
understanding who you are, what you are. I got you guys both. I think both of you said spoke to that. Who you are, what you are, and why you are. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for coming up. I'm so glad you were here because I know you like these topics. So thank you again for joining us. So
No
much
Always an
value.
problem.
honor, sir. I actually enjoy the space with you as well to be able to, because again, you do have a different level of understanding that I definitely like learning from. So
Appreciate
I
that.
appreciate that you shared in this space with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the
All right,
chat.
you
You
as well.
too.
All
Thanks,
right,
World
peace.
Class.
Peace.
And I know we added someone. I'm sure everyone knows World Class here, but if you don't know, make sure you subscribe to his channel. But final thoughts. So, Dr. Nakumbi, what are
Hmm.
your final thoughts?
Well, if you guys, Scam Likely is in the house. I'm not sure if they said hello to him earlier. And Simon Hectic, what's up, is in the house. And definitely this conversation, both were saying some interesting things about this particular conversation. But my final thoughts these are the conversations where I'm like, whoa, myself, like I get intrigued, like, wow. And then, like, ooh, how much of this is really behavior versus science and da 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 da. And I like when like-minded, so we all kind of have an idea of where we want to go with it. How do we get there? 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 Am I capable? Am I capable? Am I capable?
Right.
No, I'm not designed for that. I mean, how many limitations do we put on ourselves? I want to be a medical doctor, but I'm not smart enough. So, well, because no one in my family ever did it. We never did that in our family. We never did that in our. So that whole debate, and then again, when you bring in metaphysics and different things and neuro stuff and how does the brain work and how all of those things, I think people should take time to study if you can. If you have the time to study, I always say it won't hurt to get that extra information. Because even tonight I was thinking like, I mean, I had to go to whoever, just this Google thing. But when you guys said, I'm like, no, he said the right word. He said the right word. And then I'm looking because I just know it as the DNA and the molecules and the neuroscience and how it changes. How it changes actually changes. But then listening, like, oh yeah, meditate. Why did they say it? Why did they? Now I can then go to, oh, well, whatever it is, I'm not smart enough. I can go to a joke. I can default to my humor, right, to kind of back out of it. But
Yeah.
these are the moments when I say, hey, when it comes to nature versus nurturing, don't be willing to, don't hesitate to push the boundary, because it's really about your own limitations and understanding what is the leading source. Is it because that's who you are and how you were designed and all that? Or is it because of a certain behavior, a pinch, a pain, a consequence? People will change their behavior when the consequences are no longer bearable. But until then, how long do we stay with this certain behavior? How long do we stay ignorant? And how long do we change? How long do we go before we change it because it no longer serves us? No longer serves us. Yeah, but it's just what I've always done, so I just kind of have to stick with it. But it no longer serves you. Your temper tantrum when you were 8 years old no longer serves you at 16 years old. And your want to fight at 16 may not serve you when you're 40. And when you're 40, so how much of what you do you have to do? How much are you willing to change? And then find out what influences you the most, the nurturing side, the nurturing side. And as you say, Coach K, there's so many other elements to just kind of life in general that I invite people to explore. It might just fascinate you and leave it alone, or it might fascinate you to take on a whole new meaning of your life or our lives.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. Thank you, Dr. Nakumbe.
Well, thank you. I
I
appreciate you having this topic, and that
I
was good. Good.
I try to go much extra after this, but there's just so many different variables, and that's why I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to talk, like, if we could talk about this topic or this behavior, because it could be this, it could be this. But I find myself feeling encouraged talking about this because it's not just one thing, and that's a beautiful thing, because guess what, we can do something about it. Even if let's say you're born with, I don't know why I'm laughing, but because it's not funny, but let's say you're born with a not a good functioning arm. I don't I'm trying not to use bad language, but okay, we may not be able to believe your arm to work properly, but what can we do about this? How can we prevent it? Maybe you go off and create a foundation. I don't know, but there's just so much out there, and this is why I love what I do, and I know you love what you do, because we can help people do something about it. You're not fixed, you're not stuck. And if you look at, and I know people do feel better when they hear studies, which I don't blame them. I do too. But if there are plenty of studies about how powerful your mindset is,
Right.
especially when you're in school. And I will give, a quick example. I told myself I just was not good at math, suck at math. Like, that's just me. Like I'm terrible at math. And I would bring that up all the time. And when I took a math course in college, I wasn't doing really good, just in general, failed it, whatever, took some time off. And I went back to school, and I chose to grade replace, clean up my mess. And I took the same math class, same professor, same concepts. I mean, he taught the same thing, and I got an A. I am still Katie. Same class, same professor, same school. What had to have changed? It was definitely me, and how I took the time, did all these different things to, work and get better. But it's not so simple. But I did, work on my belief and changing what I can actually change. So just an example, with variables being the same, but what changed. So anyway,
and your willingness, right? Your willingness and motivation to do it, because it could be a scary leap, that leap of faith. But no, I know I can be successful. I just have to make some changes. And I just wanted to add, I'm sorry, these are your final thoughts. I just wanted to add, but that's the power of, I think, of coaching, where it's really about that mindset and how stuck do you plan on being, how stuck have you been, and how unstuck are you willing to get. And so that power of coaching to really help lay out the plan, and the coach's job of really just kind of getting behind you, saying, no, you know what you want to do. You know what you need to do. How do we do that? So that that transformation, you had it in you. There were some adjustments you made to now make it go to actually make it happen. So
Right.
awesome,
Right.
awesome.
That's
Hmm.
exactly. And that's why coaching is so powerful.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's just a fear that we have of even facing it. If you haven't opened your mail, or if you're afraid of like your credit score, you're afraid of your bank account, and you don't want to look at it, so but it's still there. Like it's still like kind of
Right.
haunting you. But in the meantime, your fear is kind of just what you're fearing you'll feel when you look at it.
Hmm. There's a feeling,
That's
right? So yeah,
right.
and we
It's
probably have
not
to do a show about
actually.
yeah.
Oh yeah, we probably should. We probably should.
How to deal with those feelings, because there's a feeling competing with the feeling. And at the time that feeling was negative, the stimuli behind that, I need to lose some weight. I need to lose some weight. I'm tired of this. Oh man, I need to stop drinking soda. Oh
Right.
dang, you brought another. So that stimuli is different, because when I say starting tomorrow, but tomorrow I wake up feeling refreshed to a new stimuli, and I'm not having that battle. The sense of urgency has changed. The
Right.
sense of urgency has changed. So therefore, the feeling last night and the
Yeah.
competing feeling today is not the same, and then I end up defaulting to my same behavior. So that's another whole
Right.
topic I would love for us to get into,
That's a good
that
one.
whole
That's a good
mindset.
one. I'm gonna
Yes, that.
start on Monday. I'm gonna start, and I think a lot of students do that too. I will
Hmm.
say, just
Hmm.
for my folks. But yeah, this is a great topic. I hope
Hmm.
people learn something, feel encouraged, in some way or another. And thank you, Black Men Unfiltered, for letting us have this show and share
Coach,
this space. And thank you, Dr.
hmm,
Nakumbe.
you bet. Coach K, quick question, because
Yes.
I think people kind of know where to go for resources, for not know, but for therapy stuff, because in the schools. Any quick plugs for, like, if people want to get into coaching, or is that something people can contact you about? I know there's some here who actually offer coaching type things, and not even realize, like, whoa, you would be an awesome coach. Are there
Oh, like if they want to
anyone,
become a coach?
yeah, become a coach, any tips or tricks? I think of, like, beautiful animator who's here a lot, and really able to, like, on certain topics is really like boom. But if she wanted to, like, actually coach people, like, any ideas on where to reach out? Or Lady Navoa, who she's been on a lot of different shows, has a lot of different things, has a whole wealth of knowledge, and if she ever wanted to help coach people. So any and you don't have to
Yeah.
answer now, because we could get going, but just something to think about. Like, maybe we can offer some ideas on how to get people started if they want to explore in either one of these fields that we're in.
Yeah, I will say quickly, and we can always, talk about this too on another show. But so coaching, and I'll be brief. Coaching is a newer industry, so
Hmm.
there is the ICF which regulates it, but I'd have to look into that. But technically, it's not a government regulated
Right,
thing like school, like the university is,
right,
or
right.
getting your RN license, things like that.
Hmm.
So coaching, there's a low barrier to entry. However, you can check out the ICF. They have their
Hmm.
own accrediting, um, what programs,
Yeah,
and
programs. Yeah,
there's different types of coaching.
accreditations, different type of
Yeah,
coaching. Yeah, yeah.
you can get a certification in a specific type of like niche or something like that. But I
Hmm.
went through, and I will rave till the day that I die about the life coach school. It's just called the Life Coach School. They are not ICF accredited. However, I
Accredited.
was
Okay.
like, I don't care,
Yeah.
because if you can check out a bunch of the free resources like her podcast. There
Hmm.
is a monthly thing, but they certify coaches. They also have master coach training too.
Hmm. Hmm.
But if you can check out the Life Coach School. But we can always talk about this another time, or reach
Yep.
out to me. But yeah, the coaching industry is definitely hot, and because everyone needs it. I mean,
Hmm.
everyone could use a coach. That's a fact. So
Okay.
hopefully that helped.
Fabulous. All right, boss. Thank you so much. It was an honor. Good night,
Yes.
everyone.
Thank
Much
you,
appreciate you
guys.
being here. Hit the like button on your way out. Please share
Yes.
the video if you learned something or liked it. And if you haven't yet already subscribed, please
Mhm.
do. Peace.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, CBN.